Time now for the award-winning #1 local talk show in Northeast Pennsylvania, The Sam Lesante Show. Now here's your host, Sam Lesante.
So, my friends, what do you think? Should we legalize marijuana in the state of Pennsylvania? You think it'd be a good thing? Well, today we're going to talk about legalizing marijuana. What are all the ramifications, the pros and the cons? A show I would also recommend you looking at is Modern Medicine, because Dr. Moylan, who was also a guest on my Sam Lesante show, we discussed that in detail. But today, we want to talk about the legal ramifications. And so we have no stranger to us here in Schuylkill County and also Lower Luzerne, District Attorney Christine Holman, Schuylkill County DA, along with Dr. Moylan, to talk about the the question here, Christine, is you talk to people, some of them say, legalize it, like some other states did. Then we had, which we discussed with Dr. Moylan's show, Modern Medicine, the medical marijuana. Is that good? Is it bad? So you have all these mixed emotions. Let's talk about the legal part and where you play a big role as a DA.
Sure. First thing I did, Sam, to take a look at this issue, because it's so widespread and talked about, I went to the Crimes Code and looked at the Drug and Cosmetic Act. And what I find interesting is that the lawmakers have promulgated certain schedules for certain drugs. Marijuana is listed under Schedule 1. And I brought my note card because I don't like to quote from the law unless I know it verbatim. But the Secretary of Health describes a Schedule 1 drug, narcotic, as 1, having a high potential for abuse, 2, no currently accepted medical use in the United States, and 3, lacks, there's accepted safety for the use of marijuana under supervision. Now, I've also done some homework and talked with several chiefs of police in Schuylkill County and several patrolmen. And the general consensus is this, Sam, that legalizing marijuana would be counterproductive to society. For one, marijuana would become too accessible. I look at that akin to the prescription medication that kind of blew through the roof, and lawmakers having to put a cap on that, enacting a bill, Senate Bill 1180, to monitor these prescription medications. I have found, some police officers look at it as, what are we going to have a society that goes around being stoned? There has to be a way to monitor it, and I don't want to come off as not being compassionate to individuals who suffer from pain, from the seizures or cancer, that perhaps medical marijuana can relieve them of some of that pain. But I'm certain, and I'm glad Doc Moylan is here, there's got to be some other measures to do that we can control. Lawmakers, law enforcement look at this as it's going to be abused.
Okay, so before we get to the good doctor, you said that your lawmakers said that it's counterproductive. So then why did 23 states pass it?
Well, that's a good question, Sam. And, perhaps when I say law enforcement,
yes.
The lawmakers, the legislatures in those other states, I'm not sure what criteria they looked at.
Don't you think they consulted the law enforcement and they, I would think so.
I would think so, although I don't know what Pennsylvania legislatures consulted or who they consulted with in taking a look at this law. In Schuylkill County, I don't know anybody that was consulted.
Now, there's this controversy, okay, on legalizing marijuana, period, and then the medical marijuana. I've spoken to some people who are, who are in drug rehabilitation, and some of them say that the medical marijuana, doctor, is needed. All right. So we have this dichotomy here. Do we legalize marijuana or do we legalize medical marijuana? Where's this distinction here?
Well, I think you've touched upon this salient point is the difference between recreational marijuana, which has been legalized in Colorado, for instance,
In Washington, right?
and the medical uses of marijuana. And in the recent Modern Medicine show, we pointed out that there are cannabinoids that have been approved by the FDA. Marinol comes to mind. We have been using it for 20 years as a prescription drug for my cancer patients at the Simon Kramer Cancer Institute. But there's other drugs that are in the pipeline, and several of those have been given fast-track status in the United States so that they could be looked at scientifically, and if they're worth anything, and if they're safe, 2 criteria, then they could get rapid approval. So the FDA is doing its job in that regard. Let's give them some time. But I want to just touch upon the Schedule I drugs. Marijuana is listed as one. The other one, so it keeps some bad company, but the other drugs would be heroin. You know, we see that's such a problem, out of control. LSD, ecstasy, methaqualone, and bath salts. And many of they're not legal. They're on the street. They're drugs of abuse.
So do you think?
But I think the problem would be to make one of these drugs more available. We're just going to see the same problem we saw with prescription drugs.
I agree.
Christine, what are they seeing in Colorado? Are they seeing increases of homicides or increase of heavy drug use, or because they've been selling it like crazy out there? I mean, what has law enforcement been reporting any thing different than when they didn't have it?
I don't have any direct stats on that, Sam, but I mean, that kind of brings something to mind. If marijuana is legalized, whether it be marijuana for recreation or medical, I mean, is Pennsylvania going to start growing it? Mm-hmm. I mean, where are we going to get it from? How do we control that?
Yeah.
Do you think, because it boggles my mind, if you have 23 states that pass this, I don't know if there's that many stupid legislators out there. Well, wait a second. Let me take that back. I don't know if there's any decent legislators out there saying, well, I'm going to pass this. I'm sure they had to do their homework, okay, and talking to, law enforcement, talking to medical people like you as to what, because is that an introduction? If a kid's smoking marijuana and he's getting high, does he want to get higher and then go to heroin and then go, could it be an introduction to harder drugs? Christine, what do you think about that?
Well, let me say this, Sam. I belong to the Pennsylvania District Attorneys Association, along with all the other district attorneys in Pennsylvania, and we received a letter from Senator Leach, who is a big proponent of this bill passing. And one of the things that was somewhat disturbing was the request that prosecutors give leniency to individuals who may be using marijuana at this stage. The law hasn't passed yet. And frankly, I think if the lawmakers were to open up to the District Attorneys Association, perhaps law enforcement and others, and tell us what you have in mind, it might be easier to digest. But I was elected to uphold an oath in Schuylkill County, Pennsylvania. I'm not going to disregard a law.
Senator Leach, who where's he from?
Philadelphia,
Montgomery County. Young man, old man, middle. I mean,
I don't really know much about him. I do know Senator.
Republican, Democrat.
He's about my age, and he's a Democratic persuasion.
Yeah. So he's telling you, he sends a letter as a senator in the state of Pennsylvania.
Yes.
To be lenient on those people that you arrest for using marijuana.
Yes. The tone of the letter was almost turn a blind eye, if you can, show some compassion, ignore the law. That's what I took from the law. That was my personal opinion. And what I would say to individuals is we will not be ignoring the law and allowing marijuana to be smoked as if it's for recreational or medical use. The law has not passed in Pennsylvania. It is illegal.
What would be his reason why he would want that, and what would be, I'd like to know what kind of criteria he has first of all, to send a letter out like that telling district attorneys to turn a blind eye or to have leniency, it's like I don't like to pay taxes, so I tell people not to pay taxes.
Exactly.
Okay? It's once again here again. I don't know if it's a good thing, if it's a bad thing. You hate to judge, but when I see throughout the years what can happen with marijuana, and I'm always concerned to see what's happening in the states that have passed this, okay? And I don't know, I don't have any concrete evidence. Folks, I'm talking to District Attorney Christine Holman and Dr. David Moylan. Dr. David Moylan is a Schuylkill County Coroner, and Christine Holman is the District Attorney for Schuylkill County. We'll come back with more comments on legalizing marijuana. I'd like to know what your comments are. Send them to my email, sam@ssptv.com. And also, shame on you, Senator Leach, for doing what you did. That's not proper. To be a senator in the state of Pennsylvania, do that, tell these law enforcement to turn a blind eye. Shame on you. See you after this break. Thanks for staying with us, folks. You're watching the Sam Lesante Show. Thank you so much for your comments. sam@ssptv.com is my email. And you can watch all of the Sam Lesante shows on ssptv.com. Today we're talking about marijuana. Should we legalize it? What about medical marijuana? And we have from Schuylkill County the District Attorney, Christine Holman, and the Schuylkill County Coroner, Dr. David Moylan from the Simon Kramer Cancer Institute. So we continue on with the question, I guess monitoring everything they say you should do in proportion, okay? If you drink a lot, it's no good, okay? You got alcohol, okay? So they compare marijuana with alcohol. But it's an interesting thing. And I'm not going to say which is the worst of the evil here, but, you get a couple people around, they have a couple beers, then they're drinking some beers, and then all of a sudden they're getting on that high, and let's have a shot, okay? And now we're doing shots, okay? And then after you do shots, you want to do more. You want to get it in your vein because it becomes addicting to you, okay? And I'm thinking, again, without having any medical background at all, when you're using marijuana, okay, and you're on that high, all right, do you want more? Do you want more? Do you want a bigger high? I don't know. Christine, in your dealings with law enforcement, what have they found?
Well, in my dealings with law enforcement and they're dealing with addicts, it is a progression. And I think, Sam, you're on to something there with, okay, we start with alcohol. Let's say, parents have alcohol in their liquor cabinets. Parents go out, kids have a go at it. Now we've got prescription medication. Your medicine cabinet can be the gateway to this abuse. Now, you not only have alcohol, prescription medication, now you've got marijuana because maybe there's someone in your household that has a prescription for it. So again, it's accessible. And the more you supply these narcotics, make them available, the more problems you have on the streets. One of the things that I have a real problem with, and Doc, maybe you can help with this, if there is going to be legalization for marijuana at some point, how do you regulate, and will it be regulated, by the FDA? What goes in it? We had a terrible altercation in Tamaqua. A large man, smoking marijuana, synthetic marijuana. It took several police officers and several tasers to bring him down. And for whatever reason, that marijuana or whatever ingredient was in there caused him to have a heart attack. He died.
Yes. Well, you mentioned the word gateway, and I'd like to reinforce that because I believe this is a gateway. I'm going to change hats here, put on my coroner's cap. And we recently had a very sad case. It was called a candy bowl party. And young people would dump, I guess, prescription drug that they received from their parents' medicine cabinets, dumped them all in a bowl, and then you just reach in and grab. And this young man died of multiple polypharmacy, we call it, multiple drug overdoses. But what was in the system very prominently was marijuana, the THC, the active ingredient. So again, I think it is a facilitator of harder drug abuse. And how are we going to monitor it? We don't have the science to say that a blood level of so many nanograms equates with this much dysfunction or intoxication, the way we do with the blood alcohol levels.
Right.
That science is done. So, perhaps it is obtainable, but since a lot of the marijuana is fat soluble, it's not in the bloodstream, it's in the fatty tissues and can be released days later. So a blood level might not be indicative of the degree of impairment. So it might be tough to monitor.
I know some law enforcement had that very question, Doc. How do we measure the THC levels? How do you monitor that? And they truly just see this as counterproductive and increasing DUI, drug-related accidents on the highways, on the streets.
Well, I think to follow what's happening in these 23 states where it is legal for medicinal purposes, and also the few states that it's legal for recreational use, we have to see what's going to happen. But it's an uncontrolled experiment, basically.
I have my doubts that you will get honest reporting on the states that legalize marijuana, and I'll tell you why. Because there's such a liberal slant. They're not going to give, in my opinion, and I hope I'm dead wrong with this. Okay, I don't think it's just like abortions. They don't tell you the stories about those women who had abortions and how they're psychologically a wreck. You don't hear that from Planned Parenthood. You don't hear, so I don't know how much they'll hide, okay?
Well, Sam, maybe through the medical literature, because stuff is starting to filter through, where the emergency rooms are getting busy with these overdoses, and it's also available as an edible form.
Yeah.
And again, somebody, and because it's coming in through the gastrointestinal tract, it's a slower release, so that they're not high enough and they take a couple more bites of the cookie or whatever. So there's been some overdoses related to too much of the edible.
Would you have access, Christine, as a district attorney, would you have access to knowing how many, not that I want to give you more work because you're swamped the way it is, but, because I want to deal with fact. I want to give you my opinion. I'm not trying to I see what's happening in the media today, and believe me, they're not fair. They're just not fair. And it doesn't mean that they have to be what I don't like to hear some of the things that but if medical marijuana is a good thing, and if they have a decent debate, and they bring on people like you who has experience. Okay, the doctor, how many years you've been in the business?
35 years.
30. So you think you know a little bit about what, you're a coroner, you've seen it all. Christine, you've been around in law enforcement, you know it backwards and forwards. So I go to the expert. When someone has if they have cancer, they come to Dr. Moylan, and through your eyes and the experience that you had, you're able to know, at least have some experience, okay? Is it for the money in the state of Pennsylvania? Is it, can we bury ourselves in money and then bury ourselves, along with that? I don't know, Christine. I want to be fair, but I just know with the slant of the liberal press, I don't think they will give us really the true story. And again, I hope I am wrong.
Well, I'm seeking some truth, Sam. I'm doing a crime study right now in Schuylkill County for the years 2012, 13, and 14 on separating crimes into violent, nonviolent, and looking at if there's drugs involved, what are the drugs?
That's excellent.
I will have that for you when I'm done.
That is absolutely excellent. Now we have concrete advice, like you do an autopsy. You know exactly what causes whatever happens, the cause and effect.
Well, Sam, along those very lines, we are also conducting a study in the coroner's office, and we're looking at suicides. How often, most of those patients have had toxicologies, and we're seeing what's on board that might have gotten them depressed or contributed to the problem. And also our drug overdoses. Again, marijuana is not that toxic. However, how often is that a fellow traveler with the hard stuff, the heroin?
Is there any long-term effect? I'm thinking of Cheech and Chong, who was, supposed to be the crazy marijuana guys. But when you talk to them, or you interview them, they sound like they're very normal. There was no psychological effects that I know of. Okay, so you have some stories. Hey, these people smoke marijuana all their life. Look, nothing ever happened to them. Is that true?
Well, no, I think it has to be looked at cautiously. We're talking about doing studies of epileptics, which is the marijuana derivative for seizure disorders. And we're looking at it in the younger people that have Dravet's syndrome, uncontrolled seizures. And the brain is still developing in that group. And there could be grave toxicity later on in life. And one recent study that was reported in the Journal of Neuroscience, that was last April, they looked at quote, casual users of marijuana, up to 11 marijuana cigarettes in the course of a week. And they correlated that with brain MRI scans. And they saw physical changes in some of the deep nuclei in the brain and the amygdala that, again, is an objective change that this induces in the brain.
Folks, I'm talking
Room for caution.
I'm talking to District Attorney Christian Holman of Schuylkill County and the Schuylkill County Coroner, Dr. Dave Moylan. We'll be back right after this. So what do you think, folks? Shall we legalize marijuana in the state of Pennsylvania? Well, we're getting some both sides here as to will it really be a good thing for us? We have the Schuylkill County Coroner, Dr. Dave Moylan, and the Schuylkill County District Attorney, Christine Holman. Christine, once again, I'm all for information, and then, I love debating, and sometimes if you're wrong, you admit it. So, your thoughts on legalizing marijuana?
Right now, I'll put it in simplistic terms for you, Sam. No. I'm against right now the legalization of marijuana, and that's based on my experience in talking with some law enforcement and being involved in the law. I will say this, that a prosecutor does have discretion, and if there's an instance where someone needs to smoke marijuana, they're arrested, they're charged with the DUI drug or something such as that, there is some discretion that a prosecutor can use. And if you were to tell me that you were utilizing that for seizures, or if you had cancer, if you give me some supporting documentation from a doctor, I have the ability to recommend that you be put into a diversionary program, ARD. You'd have your record expunged in a year as long as you followed all of the court-related conditions. So I don't think that there is a huge problem for individuals that are reaching out to lawmakers and telling them that it's a necessity for them to feel better.
Dr. Moylan, as a medical director of Simon Kramer Institute, Cancer Institute, and a coroner, what would be your professional opinion if you stood in front of Congress?
I'm going to give you a twofold answer. And the first is, for recreational marijuana, I would be against legalization because of the gateway nature of the drug and problems that we've seen in overdoses and suicides in Schuylkill County. However, from a medical standpoint, we have a mechanism that's already in place called the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, and ethical pharmaceutical firms have already come up with preparations here that are controlled. We know what the dose is, we know the purity, we know it's not contaminated or adulterated the way it could be from a street sale. And that is, I would plea with the state legislature to let the FDA do its job. Now, I just want to wind up with a commentary that the number pi is equal to 3.1416 mathematically, except in the state of Mississippi, where it's exactly equal to 3 by order of the state legislature. So just because the state legislature says it's so, doesn't make it so in the real scientific world.
Well, it's funny, Christine. People say, let them smoke, until someone gets on high, and they either rob you on the street or break into your house. And then what happened? When he was high on marijuana, or was high, and then all of a sudden it becomes you're now concerned about it, okay? But that's why, folks, you got to do your homework. Please, check things out. Paul Harvey had a great saying. He always told you the rest of the story. I'd be very anxious to hear people in Colorado, the states that have passed marijuana, talk to law enforcement, see what happened, and if it's good, fine. I have my doubts, folks. Believe me, I do. But remember, give me your opinion, sam@ssptv.com. Thank you, Comcast 190, and also Channel 19 up in the Wilkes-Barre, Kingston Mountaintop area, and of course, SSP, Service Electric Cablevision. We are also in Harrisburg and in Allentown as well, but some shows we do not show down there. But this show will be seen on the three systems, the Wilkes-Barre system, Hazleton system, and the Pottsville system. We'll see you next time.